if they tried or attempted to short cover right now, it would cause the most dramatic price move in history.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics for this week's physical silver and gold market update with Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin. Andy checks in with us each week to provide an update on what's going on in terms of what's called the physical market, which is when people actually buy or sell physical silver. You may have heard of people talking about the paper market and all the derivatives thereof. And when the price doesn't match what would seemingly make sense, you hear, certainly on this channel as well as many others, how basically the two have been divorced from each other, but watch out one day if you have people demanding silver. So grateful that we have Andy each week. And Andy, it's a pleasure to welcome you back on in here. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks. I appreciate it. And you're right. The divorcing of the paper price to the metals price is akin to the divorcing of the stock markets to the general economy. And it's the classic case of the tail wagging the dog. And so, yeah, I think that's a good description.
Yeah. So along those lines, we had a situation. We're recording on Wednesday, and you actually joined me on a live YouTube call earlier today. A lot of attention in the market this week about a stock called GameStop, because there's apparently a chat group on Reddit that targets stocks or assets where there's an unusual short position, and the shorts on GameStop got their faces torn off. Last I checked, it was over $300 after being $20 a couple of weeks ago. Andy, it seems really interesting to imagine what could happen with silver given the current setup. Any thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're looking at right now a setup that could absolutely destroy the commercial banks. And, you know, they already last year lost a ton of money in their short book, more so than they ever did. And now, as every $8 move right now higher in silver causes the loss that they've already experienced to further by $3 billion to the 8 big shorts on COMEX. And so, you know, you're talking massive losses right now. You know, combined, the 8 big shorts combined, their total losses from last year are north of $14 billion. So, you know, they're caught in a trap. And here's a perfect example of that, because if they tried or attempted to short cover right now, it would cause the most dramatic price move in history. And so they're caught in a position where they have to smash it to create a perception that silver's too volatile and it's archaic and it won't go higher. Because if it starts to move and you see that type of short squeeze, it will be GameStop on steroids.
Well, it certainly seems like it's set up for that. And it's interesting, as we're recording today, I'm getting messages from cell phones, computers, chat, Twitter about that Reddit chat group has started a silver manipulation thread, and apparently people are becoming intrigued quite quickly. So quite exciting times. And along with that, can you fill in what is happening on the physical level? How many buyers versus sellers? What is the order flow like there at this particular time?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this on our conversation today on your live chat. And, you know, it's important to understand that in this industry, which is just in time industry, which we really realized that in March, when the lockdowns inhibited the ability to get product imported and delivered easily. Right now, you know, for the last couple of weeks, supply has been pretty decent as 2021 product came into the marketplace. It's typically produced late in the previous year, late in 2020. And so the allocations that we all received here early in the year was produced earlier in 2020 or at the latter stages of the year. when you see the U.S. Mint run out of gold, eagles, and buffaloes 2 weeks into January, your eyebrows ought to raise a little bit, thinking, well, what's that all about? Typically, when we see problems with supply, they happen much, much later in the year. When I called my operations this morning to ask what would be a good silver item to list as a special for Arcadia, his exact words were to me, "This is getting, or supply is getting sketchy." And, so it's something that can change at the drop of a hat. And that's something I've always had a hard time even getting used to in this industry, where one day I'm quoting someone the ability to do a $10 million order, no problem. And the next day getting a fraction of that becomes challenging without any massive delivery delays. In terms of order flow and style, I've been saying this for the better part of a year with you. The majority of the business we do, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a year, Chris, the majority is in silver these days. And junk silver, as an example, which was been blowing out for the last several months, is getting hard to come by right now. All of a sudden, this is an item that you can't repurchase. And one of the things that I've often said about the characteristics of a gold and silver bull market, especially as it gets going, is that they say there's no bull market like a precious metals market because it's identified by concern. And whether the price is behaving in the manner we think it should, the concern collectively of the public is growing. For whatever reason, there's a myriad of reasons we should all be concerned, from economically, socially, politically, morally, whatever gets you concerned. That's a personal thing. But when people are accumulating precious metals, most of them aren't doing it to get wealthy. They know it's undervalued. They know it offers good potential. That's probably the biggest reason to buy it over gold, because it is undervalued and it does have massive potential. But they're buying it because they're concerned. So we're seeing virtually nothing in the way of people selling, nothing. And on the big down days, you can rest assured that people aren't flocking to their phone to place sell orders with us. It's the opposite of that. They buy knowing it's a great value, that they've received a subsidy for the day. And I will just simply end that question by saying it's the same thing I've been saying for the last several months. Always the little boy who cried wolf, always early. But this market will define itself by the inability to easily source product. It can change in the blink of an eye. And when my trader who tells me it's getting sketchy, when he says that, look, I thought we had more product than anyone through COVID. We had better selection and availability than anyone, including all the online companies. And we're very plugged into a very diverse network. And when I hear that, I begin to think, hey, this is getting concerning. So that's where we are right now. Still some stuff available, premiums on the rise, and availability getting tougher.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. And, by all means, it's interesting just to see over time, you have the physical buying, you have the supply that goes offline when silver's $15 for a couple of years, and all these factors that I understand people get tired of waiting for it. I mean, there's been times I've felt that same way. And then it's like you wake up one morning at some point and realize, well, profile hasn't changed. In fact, the longer it goes on, to me, seemingly the further the beach ball is stuffed underwater. So it's just interesting to see this combination of forces, and especially today, looking into the GameStop thing quite a bit. Again, I'll be clear the way I phrase this. I don't know that GameStop will be what unravels the silver market, but when you put that much leverage on something and then hide it for so long, I don't know. It certainly seems like something like this could be the way that it ultimately unravels. Would you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the difference is that you don't see tremendous amount of negative GameStop rhetoric. You don't see some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world pay $920 million fines for suppressing the value of GameStop. So what GameStop is a taste of what happens when Mother Nature steps in and corrects inequities and dislocations in markets. And you have the most powerful people on the planet, the wealthiest, that have an agenda. And that agenda that I've been, I think, articulate in saying is for the last 4 years has been holding down the price for a reason. What is that reason? It's to accumulate massive quantities. Central banks have been doing it. Commercial banks have been doing it. The others on COMEX have been taking delivery in massive amounts. The big money is front running the importance of accumulation at subsidized prices. They're not holding it down just for the hell of it. I would argue they're holding it down to accumulate it. And at some point, those who have held those short positions 1 minute too long will feel GameStop on steroids. I mean, that's exactly what happens when Mother Nature gets involved. And this would be many times what GameStop is, but nonetheless, certainly a valuable tool to see what could happen.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting because, again, I mentioned we're recording on Wednesday. Looks like GameStop closed the Tuesday session around $150. Then it had a decent day today, up $199.53 or 134.8%. And I'm going to, when we wrap up, take a look at the option structure on that one. Man, some of those downside puts are not looking cheap right now. But anyway, Andy, we're going to dig into your reader mailbag. You have fan mail as always. So first off the bat here, as you know, taxes on precious metals are hard to figure out. Like buying the miners, in some situations, you don't have to pay the metal tax, and understanding long-term gains versus short-term gains. So I guess that's a couple questions wrapped up into one. But any thoughts, just general advice, how do the taxes work on metals purchases?
Well, that's kind of a whole big ball of wax. I mean, if we talk about when you purchase precious metals, there are 13 states out there that have some semblance of sales tax issues. So without getting too deep into that, we'll simply say that if you take sales tax out of the equation, you have it delivered to a state that does not charge sales tax, have it sent to a depository where sales tax don't apply, what have you. With that being the case, there are no tax implications on purchasing precious metals whatsoever. The capital gains rate for physical precious metals is at 28%, and it is not the same thing as normal capital gains in equities, albeit I don't know what Biden has proposed to move regular capital gains up to, but collectibles are at 28%. I always found it humorous that GLD and SLV, the proxies, the ETFs, are taxed at the same 28% collectible rate, then you can never take possession of it. I don't think anyone should ever own those products for a myriad of reasons, that being one of the bigger ones. And when you sell precious metals, the majority of what you would sell would be the honor system in terms of its reporting, in that the dealers only have reporting requirements on certain items in certain quantities. Quickly, in form of silver, anytime someone sells at one time more than 1,000 ounces in bar or round form, not coins like American Eagles or Maples or Krugerrands, but bars or generic rounds like the Buffalo rounds. If you sell more than 1,000 of those at one time, a dealer would be required to take your social security number and report to 1099B. Nothing else would trigger it except, take that back, junk silver in $1,000 face value, 1,000 face. So nothing else would trigger it, including the old Morgan and Peace dollars, Eagles, Maples, Krugerrands, Pandas, any of the coins, no dealer reporting. On gold, just for the couple gold listeners out there, you have no reporting on purchasing, and when you sell, the only things that would trigger dealer reporting requirements would be bars, Krugerrands, Maple Leafs, and Mexican 50 pesos on the 25th ounce in one transaction. So you could sell transactions throughout the year as long as they're not related. They're not reportable. But if you exceed 24 ounces being sold in any of those items, Krugerrands, Maple Leafs, 50 pesos, or gold bars, on the 25th ounce, the dealer would be required to take your social and file a 1099B. Always best to chat with your tax professional, but in general, the laws are rather straightforward.
Alrighty. Well, I appreciate that. Next question we have here. If one wants the most silver for their dollar, what is the best way to go? Why don't we start with that? He has a couple follow-ons, but why don't you start with that one?
Well, I think there's there's a fine line between penny wise and pound foolish in this industry. And while you could buy 1,000-ounce silver bar and save money over just about anything, you are so wholeheartedly illiquid uh, and immobile, it just doesn't make sense. And you know more than anyone what it's like to hold a 1,000-ounce bar, Chris. You've talked about carrying it on the subway many times. And so that's about the only way, other than, once you pack it up, you can't do UPS and FedEx if once you own it. Dealers can, but the consumer can't. And packaging it properly with registered mail, you're right there at the 70-pound threshold. If it exceeds it, as many times it will, they won't ship it. So you don't want to get the biggest bang for the buck without being cognizant of liquidity and flexibility. And for just a very few cents different to buy 100-ounce or per ounce, to buy a 100-ounce bar or a 10-ounce bar or a 1-ounce round, you are many, many times more liquid and flexible. And in the case of a 1-ounce round, 1,000 times more. And so the savings often is not commensurate with the loss of flexibility and demand. Generally speaking, however, I would say bags of 90% pre-65 coins are the best value, period. Because not only do you have the greatest utility, it's recognized, it's very, very liquid, it is high content per dollar, silver melt, probably the best value. And it's unusual because in gold anyway, rather, or platinum, the smaller the unit, always the much, much, much higher the premium. Here in silver, you have the greatest utility, the smallest unit, and currently the best value, and it can't be reproduced. For me, I'd buy bags of pre-65 silver all day long, and if I'm looking for the best value, because you also get the greatest flexibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although in one of his follow-up questions, he mentioned the coins with the premiums like the Eagles. And I think if you just have silver, you're going to be okay. But what he was getting at is it worth paying for the premiums where, if we have a real silver shortage, you would think conceivably premiums on silver eagles could skyrocket as well. But that's where, again, it's like just have the silver, trying to really analyze, well, are the premiums going to skyrocket? Or are they going to come down? I think would be less relevant than having silver. Is that making any sense?
I mean, if you need to blow your nose and you reach for Kleenex or a generic brand, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. One may feel a little better, may look a little better, have a nicer box, but it's important to remember that, normally when premiums are escalating, you don't hear people saying this, but it's only when there's no demand for silver that people bitch about the fact that the dealers don't pay big premiums. I'll always pay over the price of silver, minimum 10, 15%, usually somewhere 8 to 10% for sure, over the price of silver, no matter in the worst conditions. And in March, when, silver was $12 and you had to pay $10 over spot to buy Silver Eagle, I would have paid you north of $9 to buy yours back. So the moral of the story is the premium that you're paying on those Eagles, you'll get it on the other side. And in particular, if it's a demand for silver, you'll definitely get it. Almost all of it, and in some cases much more, because if you had bought Silver Eagles in December and paid $3 an ounce silver in March, I'd have paid you $9 over. So premium is set by the distributors who get allocations from the mints. When the mints run out of product and the demand is through the roof, the distributors set high premiums. But that's not just on ask, that's bid too. So it goes both ways. It's just less visible because no one's selling when the price is going through the roof. People are selling when it's dropping, and the distributors and the dealers are loaded up to their gills with product, and then have to go into their line of credit to pay for buying more product. So anyways, it's an interesting phenomenon, but I would say to you that in general, if the market goes crazy, it's more important to have number of ounces. But I will tell you that on some of the coins like Eagles, you pay the premium if things go where we think, you'll get it. If you do decide you want to sell, you'll get it on that end too.
Well, appreciate that. Next one here. For silver bars, does it really matter what mint they come from?
Well, not really. There's a half a dozen name brand mints. When I started in this industry, it was just Johnson Matthey and Engelhard. Those are very cool bars still. Both of them don't produce anymore. Johnson Matthey sold their production to Asahi. We've been running a special on 1 ounce Asahi rounds all week long that we announced last week on our interview. So the name brand, you got the Royal Canadian Mint and the Perth Mint that make nice bars, and you have, of course, Johnson Matthey and Engelhard and Asahi, but the Johnson Mattheys and Engelhards would all be older ones. In terms of the new ones, it's Perth, PAMP, Royal Canadian Mint, and then you have others. And so I guess, it's like anything. There's always a little bit more demand for something that's name brand, but in the end, is it worth paying an extra premium? Maybe if it's only about, 15, 20 cents an ounce. I don't want to undermine the relevance and the importance of getting the greatest value. 100-ounce bars are kind of it's an interesting question because, I've seen generic bars trade for melt or below in normal times where the premium bars trade at 75 or 80 cents over. So if the spread isn't too high, it always is best to buy, name brand. Asahi, Perth, PAMP, Johnson Matthey, Royal Canadian Mint, etc. If you can. If not, getting CNT or Silvertown or any of those, well, that's a pretty darn good choice too. It's when you get into the wonky stuff that that's quirky and no one buys it. Now the dealers don't want to take much of it because they have to hold it and no one wants to buy it. So it sits on their shelf and the cost to carry gets involved. So sorry to be so long-winded. Promised you I wouldn't. Bottom line is simply this. If it's a small margin, 20, 25 cents an ounce, yeah, it makes sense to buy name brand.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And this last one here for today. Someone recently bought some generic silver rounds, 4.9s fine, so 0.9999. And he found it was actually less expensive than 3.9 Silver Eagles. Does that sound right, Andy? And any explanation on that one?
Yeah, well, the Royal Canadian Mint and the Perth Mint, to my knowledge, are the only mints that make 4.9 fine pure silver. I would have guessed that's what he meant because I don't know of any, and maybe I'm wrong. I just don't follow it close enough. I don't think any of the refiners out there make 4.9 fine, but the RCM does make the Maple Leaf is 4.9 and the Perth Mint Kangaroo is 4.9, and they are about $1 less than the Eagle. And is it worth it to buy the Eagle in comparison to those? Well, if you live in other parts of the world, definitely not. If you live in Australia or New Zealand or Toronto or whatever, but here again, the American Eagle gold is 22 karat. It has an ounce of pure gold and a tenth of an ounce of silver sprinkled on it. Makes the net weight of the coin 1.1 ounce, but decreases the purity to 22 karat. Yet it's always been priced more than the 24 karat Maple Leaf. When you're talking such a minute amount, 3.9 versus 4.9, when you get into the thousandth of an ounce, it's somewhat more of a novelty and inconsequential. And it brings into question, however, is it worth it to pay higher premiums for gold and silver American Eagles? And that's a personal decision. Some people would say no. Royal Canadian Mint makes the purest silver in the world. They also make the only 5.9 fine gold coins in the world, and they're always priced less than the Eagle. It's just a market, I guess, for North America. Might be different in other parts of the world, but the answer simply is it's a personal preference, no right or wrong choice here.
Well, that sounds good, and appreciate everything that you shared here today. Before we wrap up, any parting thoughts, any silver specials, any good deals that we should know about?
Well, the only parting thought, I often comment about one person you have on your show, and that's Andrew McGuire. And I find his information to be fantastic. And, I've been the champion of the Basel III reclassification of gold. I've talked about it as much as anyone in the country for the last year. And when he talks about the Basel III restrictions or implementations going into effect June 28th, it's very interesting and very exciting, actually, when you think about what that really means. 85% ratio collateral to position in a market that is so heavily rehypothecated, the potential is fantastic. And you wonder what it's going to take for these banks to clean up this massive short position prior to this revaluation. And I guess the mind can only wander and wonder. So in any case, in terms of especially, as I mentioned on your live stream, we still have a halfway decent allocation of 2020 Silver Britannias that we will offer to your listeners. And the Britannias will be $3.09 over the price of silver. So that would be the special going forward. And if I had to guess, I think you'll see those will go very quickly. And as David Morgan was saying about the long delays in getting product back, when I have to reorder, that's when you're going to start to see delays. Product is available now, but when I have to reorder from the mints and the refineries, this is when the delays start to happen. So I guess we'll have to see next week. We'll revisit that.
Yeah, although Andy, wrapping up, I've had a lot of fun today because I don't know, I try and notice intuition and maybe the difference between that and when you're imagining or guessing things, but it sure seems like a lot of interesting stuff is happening right now. And I don't know how this will all unravel, although it's exciting to be in the game in either case. And just to have a little fun here, again, I've heard since things happened, there's been a thread opened on Reddit in regards to silver manipulation, which I'm guessing if you're listening to this now, you've probably heard of it. So to sweeten the pot and do my part to let freedom overwhelm JP Morgan and their big whales, I'm going to toss in 5 ounces of silver. We're going to give away 5 winners. So if they take this interview, which hopefully would help people that might be new to the silver story understand what's going on, and post it in that Reddit group. Again, I am not a Reddit user. I think you can't just sign up and go slam it in there. So this one will be counting on our Reddit savvy listeners. But to help support your efforts out there, I'm going to toss in 5. I'm going to go for the Britannias, Andy, because Yara sent me a roll of those. There's something beautiful about them. They just have a nice luster. And for some of our great Arcadians out there who are helping to bring back free markets, if you can post something in Reddit and then tag Miles Franklin and Arcadia Economics on Twitter, we'll find 5 winners to give away a 2020 Silver Britannia to. What do you think about that, Skipper?
I think we just double it and make it 10.
Double down. Wow. He re-raises. I love it. I knew I could count on you. And yeah, it's just nice to see. Who knows? Maybe this will be it. Who knows? Maybe we'll be seeing it go on for a couple more years. I think it's going to be sooner than later, but we'll have fun doing our part, following along, reminding people that if it does take longer than you might expect, well, certainly if you have income, that's what I do anyway, which I'm not recommending as licensed financial advice, but I would say just adapting my mindset to what is rather than what I think should be or want to happen. You know, that's what we can do, right?
That's all we can do, buddy. Keep fighting, keep fighting the good fight. And, you know, you're a mouthpiece. You got more courage and more leverage than most people out there. And so keep doing what you're doing. I'm happy and thrilled to be a part of it. And I'll be there by your side as long as we can keep doing this.
All right. Well, we'll have fun. So go Reddit users, go post this in Reddit and win some silver. Let us know how that goes. And in case anybody wants any more coverage of the GameStop and silver parallels, well, that is coming your way now.